What happens when one letter, meant for no one, reaches the most dangerous man in the kingdom? Fenna Ashcroft never imagined her private thoughts would end up in the hands of Alpha King Ronan Hartwell. A single mistake. One letter describing his voice, his hands, the way firelight carved shadows across his face during council meetings. Words she wrote in the solitude of midnight, never meant to be read by anyone, least of all him, but her apprentice sent it, straight to the palace, straight to the king. Now, as she stands in her cramped office in the town of Ashenir, staring at the royal seal on the envelope that just arrived, Fenna knows her life is about to change forever. Will she lose everything? Or has she unwittingly begun something far more dangerous than she ever imagined? Stay with us until the end to find out how one woman's mistake became the beginning of an impossible love. And don't forget to like this video and comment which city you're watching from. The candle on Fenna Ashcroft's desk had burned down to a stub, wax pooling across the scarred wooden surface like spilled cream. She didn't notice. Her quill scratched across parchment in the thick silence of her office, the only sound besides the distant creak of the Ashenir town hall settling into the cold autumn night. She shouldn't have been writing this letter. She knew that. Had known it from the moment she dipped her quill into the inkwell and begun forming the words that had haunted her for weeks. But late at night, when the world slept and the weight of propriety lifted like morning fog, Fenna allowed herself this one indulgence: honesty. "I have watched you address the council for 3 months now," she wrote, her script precise and elegant despite the tremor in her fingers, "and I have memorized things I should not know. The way your voice drops half an octave when you're tired, how your left hand tightens on the armrest when Lord Vaymar speaks, the exact angle of your jaw when firelight catches it from the western windows." Fenna paused, reading over what she'd written. Heat crept up her neck. This was madness, pure, undiluted madness. She was the town scribe of Ashenir, a position she'd fought tooth and nail to earn in a world that believed women's hands were too delicate for serious work, their minds too flighty for matters of record and law. For 5 years, she'd proven them wrong. She'd documented every treaty, every land dispute, every marriage and death and birth in this corner of the western reaches with flawless accuracy. And now she was writing love letters to the Alpha King like some moonstruck girl. Not love letters, she corrected herself sharply. Observation letters, character studies. A way to process the strange tightness in her chest that appeared whenever King Ronan Hartwell entered the council chamber, all broad shoulders and barely contained power, his presence filling the room like smoke. "You have a scar," she continued writing, unable to stop herself now, "just above your right eyebrow. It's nearly invisible unless the light hits it precisely right. I wonder about it sometimes. Wonder what battle marked you there, what moment of violence or carelessness left its evidence on your skin. I wonder if it still hurts on cold mornings, or if you've forgotten it entirely." The words flowed faster now, her quill dancing across the page. "Your hands are not what I expected. I thought a king's hands would be soft, pampered, but yours are scarred and calloused, the knuckles slightly crooked as though they've been broken and healed badly. They're workers' hands, warriors' hands. And when you gesture during council meetings, I find myself watching them instead of taking notes, which is highly unprofessional and completely unlike me." Fenna set down her quill, pressing her palms against her eyes. What was she doing? These letters, she'd written 6 of them now, were meant to stay locked in her private drawer, a secret outlet for feelings that had no place in her carefully ordered life. She was 28 years old, too old for foolish infatuations, too practical to believe in fairy tales where common scribes caught the attention of Alpha Kings. And yet, she picked up the quill again. "I think about what it would be like," she wrote, her script growing smaller, more hesitant, "to be seen by you, really seen. Not as the scribe who records your words, invisible behind her desk, but as a woman who sees you in return, who notices that you take your tea with honey but never ask for it, waiting until someone offers. Who knows you prefer standing to sitting during long meetings, as though the throne itself chafes against some restless part of you. I think about what your voice would sound like speaking my name, just once, just to know how it would feel to exist in your awareness, even for a moment. But these are thoughts for shadows and candlelight, thoughts that dissolve in daylight, where I am Fenna Ashcroft, town scribe, and you are the Alpha King of the Western Reaches, and there are 1,000 miles of propriety and power between us. I write these letters to no one, to myself, to the small, secret part of my heart that refuses to be sensible. She signed it simply, F. Then she folded the letter carefully, sealing it with plain wax, not the official seal she used for town documents. She placed it with the others in her locked drawer, beneath the false bottom she'd installed precisely for this purpose. There. Done. The feelings were on paper, contained and controlled, where they could do no harm. Fenna stood, stretching muscles stiff from hours of sitting. Dawn would come in a few hours, bringing with it the usual flood of administrative work. She needed sleep. She was halfway to the door when she heard it, the soft scrape of footsteps in the hallway outside her office. Her heart jumped. No one should be here at this hour. The town hall locked at sunset, and she had the only key to this wing. Miss Ashcroft? The voice was young, nervous. Her apprentice, Jacob. Fenna yanked open the door. The boy stood there, all gangly limbs and spotted face, holding a leather satchel that bulged with documents. Jacob, what in the— It's past midnight. What are you doing here? The apprentice shifted his weight, looking guilty. I'm sorry, miss. I know you said the dispatches could wait until morning, but I couldn't sleep, and I thought I'd just sort them now, get a head start on tomorrow, and— That's very dedicated, Fenna interrupted, but highly unnecessary. Go home. Get some rest. Yes, miss. I finished sorting them. The ones for the palace, the ones for the regional offices. I thought I'd drop them at the courier station on my way home, save time in the morning. Something cold touched the base of Fenna's spine. The palace dispatches? She asked carefully. Jacob, did you go through my office? His eyes widened. Only to the main desk, miss. I would never touch your private. I just collected the documents from the outgoing tray, the ones with the palace seal already prepared. The outgoing tray, where she'd set down her personal letter while she cleaned her quill. Jacob, Fenna said, very quietly, very calmly, though her pulse hammered in her ears, show me exactly which documents you packaged for the palace. The boy fumbled with the satchel, pulling out a bundle wrapped in oilcloth and tied with official cord. Through the gap in the wrapping, Fenna could see the corner of her own handwriting on plain parchment. Her letter. Her private, personal, utterly inappropriate letter. No, she whispered. Miss, is something wrong? Everything was wrong. Everything was catastrophically, irreversibly wrong. Jacob, she said, her voice strange and distant to her own ears. Did you read any of the documents? No, miss, of course not. That would be highly improper. And the courier station, you said you haven't been there yet. No, I came here first to tell you, but I can go now if— Give me the satchel. Miss, give me the satchel. Jacob handed it over, looking alarmed. Fenna tore through the wrapping with shaking fingers, scattering official reports and petitions across the floor until she found it. Her letter. Folded. Sealed with plain wax. Sitting right on top of the weekly administrative summary addressed to King Ronan Hartwell. Oh, gods, Fenna breathed. Oh, gods, oh, gods, oh. Miss Ashcroft, you're scaring me. She looked up at her apprentice, this well-meaning boy who'd just destroyed her life with his initiative and dedication. Jacob, she said carefully, this letter was not meant for the palace. His face went white. But it was in the outgoing tray with the official seal. I set it down while cleaning my quill. It's personal correspondence. Private. She laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. Very, very private. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Can I, is there anything? Go home, Jacob. But go home. Her voice cracked. Please. The boy fled. Fenna sank into her chair, clutching the letter to her chest. Relief made her dizzy. She'd caught it. Just in time. The words she'd written, those mortifying, revealing, unprofessional words, would never reach the Alpha King's hands. She was safe. She burned the letter that night, watching her careful script curl and blacken in the candle flame. Then she burned the other 5 letters too, just to be certain. The smoke smelled like regret and narrow escapes. 3 days passed. Fenna threw herself into work with manic focus, as though the sheer volume of administrative tasks could erase the memory of how close she'd come to disaster. She reorganized the entire filing system. She updated the property records dating back 15 years. She personally delivered documents to the courier station, checking and rechecking each seal. Jacob tiptoed around her like she was made of glass and thunder. On the fourth morning, a rider came from the palace. Fenna was in the middle of transcribing a water rights dispute when the town hall's receptionist appeared in her doorway, face pale. "Miss Ashcroft? Someone from the palace has—" Fenna's quill froze mid-word. "What?" "Royal courier, miss, with a message, for you, personally." The bottom dropped out of Fenna's stomach. She stood on legs that felt like water and followed the receptionist to the main hall, where a man in the king's livery stood waiting. He wore the silver and black of the royal household, and his expression was carefully neutral. "Fenna Ashcroft?" he asked. "Yes." Her voice came out steady. "A miracle." "I have a message from His Majesty, King Ronan Hartwell." The courier produced a sealed envelope, not the usual official parchment, but fine paper, sealed with the king's personal crest in midnight blue wax. Fenna took it with numb fingers. "His Majesty requests a response at your earliest convenience," the courier said. Then he bowed, actually bowed to her, and left. Fenna stood in the town hall's main room, surrounded by curious stares from the clerks and administrators who'd stopped working to witness this impossible scene. The letter felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Miss Ashcroft?" The receptionist's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Are you quite all right?" "I need a moment," Fenna heard herself say. "Please excuse me." She walked, didn't run, refused to run, back to her office. Closed the door, locked it, leaned against it, staring at the envelope in her hands. He'd read it. Somehow, despite her precautions, despite burning the letter, King Ronan Hartwell had read her private thoughts, had read about his hands and his voice and the way firelight carved shadows across his face. Fenna was going to be sick, or fired. Probably both. Her hands shook as she broke the seal and unfolded the letter. The king's handwriting was bold and angular, each letter formed with decisive strokes. "Miss Ashcroft," it began. Formal, distant. Her heart sank. "I have read your letter 4 times now. Each reading reveals something new, some observation I hadn't noticed you noticing, some detail I thought invisible." Fenna's breath caught. "I should, perhaps, be offended by such scrutiny. A king values his privacy, his unknowability. Power rests partly in mystery, in the distance between ruler and ruled. And yet, I find I am not offended. I am— the word feels strange to write, but I will write it anyway— grateful. In 5 years of rule, no one has looked at me the way your words suggest you have looked at me. No one has seen beyond the crown, the title, the carefully maintained authority. You mentioned my hands. I broke the knuckles in a training accident when I was 17. They healed poorly because I was too proud to admit the injury and seek proper treatment. I had forgotten about it until I read your words and felt the ghost of that old pain. You mentioned my voice dropping when I'm tired. I didn't know I did that. I've spent years cultivating a voice that projects command, control. I didn't realize exhaustion stripped that away, made me more myself and less the role I play. You see me, Fenna Ashcroft, and I find, God's help me, I want to be seen." Fenna's eyes were burning. She blinked rapidly, refusing to let tears fall onto the precious paper. "I want to hear more of your observations. I want to know what else you've noticed, what else I've revealed without realizing. I want—" The word was crossed out, written over. "I request the honor of meeting you, not as king and scribe, with a desk between us and official business as excuse, but as 2 people who might have something rare, the possibility of being truly known. There is a pier on the harbor's north end. Tomorrow at sunset, if you are willing, come alone. I will do the same. If you do not come, I will understand. This is highly irregular, possibly improper, certainly risky for both of us, but I find I care less about propriety than I once did. I have been unseen for so long, Fenna. Your letter made me realize how starved I've been for recognition. Please come." It was signed simply Ronan, not King Ronan Hartwell, not His Majesty. Just Ronan, as though they were equals, as though titles and rank meant nothing in the space between her reading and his writing. Fenna read the letter again, then a third time. Her heart beat so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. This was madness. Agreeing to a secret meeting with the Alpha King? Career suicide. Social suicide. If anyone found out, her reputation, her carefully built credibility, would be destroyed. She should write back and politely decline, blame the letter on temporary insanity, apologize for the invasion of privacy, return to her quiet, ordered life. But, I want to be seen. Those words echoed in her chest like a bell. Fenna thought of all the times she'd sat in council meetings, invisible behind her desk, watching Ronan Hartwell perform the role of king, watching the careful control, the measured responses, the weight of responsibility that settled over him like armor. She thought of being seen herself, really seen, not as the competent scribe, the reliable administrator, the woman who'd fought so hard to be taken seriously that she'd forgotten how to be anything else. She thought of sunset on a pier, and a conversation that might change everything or mean nothing, and the terrifying freedom of not knowing which. Her hands moved before her mind fully decided, reaching for fresh parchment. "Your Majesty," she began, then crossed it out. "Ronan," she wrote instead, her pulse racing at the intimacy of it. "I will be there." She sealed it before she could reconsider and called for Jacob, who appeared looking guilty and nervous. "I need this delivered to the palace," Fenna said, handing him the letter. "Immediately. Directly into the hands of King Hartwell. No one else." Jacob's eyes went wide. "Miss Ashcroft, I'm so sorry about the mix-up with the other letter. I never meant to—" "Jacob," Fenna met his eyes. "Sometimes the worst mistakes lead to the best outcomes. Now go. Quickly." He fled, clutching the letter like it was made of glass. Fenna returned to her desk, picked up her quill, and stared at the water rights dispute she'd been transcribing. The words swam meaninglessly before her eyes. Tomorrow at sunset she would meet the Alpha King on a pier. Tomorrow at sunset her carefully ordered life would crack open like an egg. She should be terrified. Instead, for the first time in years, Fenna Ashcroft felt alive. The rest of the day passed in a fog. Fenna went through the motions of her work, recording, filing, reviewing, while her mind spun in endless circles. What would she wear? What would she say? What if she'd misread everything, and this was some elaborate royal joke? No. The letter had been too raw, too honest for mockery, unless honesty itself was the cruelest joke of all. By evening, Fenna had worked herself into such a state of anxious anticipation that she could barely eat the dinner her housekeeper brought. She picked at bread and cheese, her stomach too knotted to accept food. "You feeling poorly, miss?" Mrs. Dalton asked, concern creasing her broad face. "You've barely touched your plate." "Just tired," Fenna lied. "Long day." Mrs. Dalton didn't look convinced, but she knew better than to press. "Well, you get yourself to bed early. You're looking pale." Fenna promised she would, though she knew sleep was impossible. Her mind wouldn't stop replaying the letter, parsing every word for hidden meanings. "I want to be seen." What did that mean, really? Want in what way? And seen how deeply? She tried to imagine the meeting. Would they sit? Stand? How did one greet an Alpha King in an unofficial capacity? Was there protocol for secret peer rendezvous? Fenna almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. That night, she laid out 3 different dresses before settling on a simple blue wool. Practical, modest, but well made. Not trying too hard, not trying too little. The dress of a woman who took herself seriously but wasn't above being seen as a woman. She braided her dark hair, then unbraided it, then braided it again. Left it down, pinned it up. Cursed herself for caring so much about appearance when this was supposed to be about being seen for who she was, not how she looked. Finally, exhausted by her own indecision, Fenna fell into bed and lay staring at the ceiling, her thoughts a tangle of hope and terror. When she finally slept, she dreamed of hands with crooked knuckles reaching for her across an impossible distance, and a voice that dropped half an octave saying her name like a prayer. She woke before dawn, unrested but buzzing with nervous energy. The day of the meeting crawled by with excruciating slowness. Every minute felt like an hour. Every hour felt like a week. Fenna made mistakes. small ones, but mistakes nonetheless. She filed a document in the wrong folder. She misspelled a name in a land deed. She had to rewrite an entire page of council minutes because her handwriting was so shaky it was illegible. "Miss Ashcroft?" Jacob ventured around midday. "Are you sure you're all right?" "I'm fine," Fenna snapped, then immediately felt guilty. "I'm sorry. I didn't sleep well. I'm fine." She wasn't fine. She was coming apart at the seams. At 4 o'clock, she gave up on productivity entirely and locked herself in her office, pacing like a caged animal. What was she doing? This was insane. She should send word that she'd changed her mind, that she couldn't come, that she'd made a terrible mistake. But she didn't send word. Instead, at 5:15, Fenna Ashcroft left the town hall through the back entrance, pulling her cloak tight against the autumn wind, and walked toward the harbor. The sun was already sinking toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. The pier stretched out into darkening water like a finger pointing toward the edge of the world. And at the end of it, silhouetted against the dying light, stood a man, tall, broad-shouldered, waiting. Fenna's breath caught. This was real. This was actually happening. She forced her feet to move, one step after another along the weathered boards of the pier. The wood creaked beneath her weight. Gulls cried overhead. The smell of salt and fish filled her nose. The man didn't turn as she approached. He kept his gaze on the water, giving her time, giving her the chance to retreat if she chose. Fenna didn't retreat, didn't. She stopped a few feet behind him, close enough to speak, far enough to maintain some semblance of propriety. "Your Majesty," she said softly. He turned. The dying sunlight caught his face the way she'd described in her letter, illuminating the scar above his eyebrow, the strong line of his jaw, the slight crookedness of his nose that suggested it had been broken at least once. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. Dark gray, almost silver in this light, looking at her like she was something precious and terrifying all at once. "Fenna," he said, and his voice did drop just slightly in a way that sounded like relief and wonder and barely controlled hope. He'd said her name in his voice, the sound she'd imagined 100 times but never truly expected to hear. Something inside Fenna's chest cracked open and light poured in. "Ronan," she answered and smiled. For a moment, they simply stood there facing each other on the weathered pier while the sun bled into the horizon. The world narrowed to the space between them, 6 feet of salt-worn wood and cooling air charged with possibility and terror. Ronan looked different without the trappings of court. No crown, no ceremonial armor, just a simple dark coat over rough spun shirt and trousers, the kind a merchant might wear. He'd even left his guards behind, she realized. Truly alone, as promised. The vulnerability of it struck her breathless. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I wasn't certain you would." "I wasn't certain either," Fenna admitted. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. "Right up until I started walking, I thought I might turn around." "What changed your mind?" She met his eyes, those storm gray eyes that had haunted her for months. Curiosity, and she hesitated, then decided honesty had brought them this far. Loneliness, I think. The kind that doesn't go away just because you're surrounded by people. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe. Or relief at being understood. "Yes," he said quietly. Exactly that. They stood in silence again, but it felt different now. Less awkward, more weighted with things unsaid. "Your letter," Ronan began, then stopped. Started again. "When I first read it, I thought it was some kind of elaborate test, that one of my advisors had planted it to gauge my reaction, measure my weaknesses." Fenna's stomach dropped. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to see it. My apprentice made a mistake and—" "No." He held up a hand. "I'm glad he did, because by the 4th reading, I realized something. No one trying to manipulate me would have noticed those things. The tea with honey. My preference for standing. These are observations that require—" He searched for the word. "Attention. Real attention, not calculation." "I didn't mean to watch you so closely," Fenna said, heat rising in her cheeks. "It's unprofessional. Inappropriate for a scribe to—" "To see?" Ronan's mouth quirked in something almost like a smile. "Fenna, I've had scribes for 5 years. 3 different ones before you. Not a single one could tell you how I take my tea or whether I prefer sitting or standing. They record words, not people. You're the first who seems to understand there's a difference." The way he said her name, like he was testing how it felt on his tongue, sent warmth spiraling through her chest. "I've always paid attention to people," she said. "It's why I'm good at my job. Details matter. The way someone pauses before answering a question, the words they choose or avoid, but with you," she trailed off, uncertain how to finish. "With me," he prompted gently. "With you, it became something else, something more than professional observation." Fenna wrapped her arms around herself against the wind. "I tried to stop, tried to maintain proper distance, but every council meeting, there you were, and I couldn't help but notice the scar above your eyebrow, or the way your hands moved when you spoke, or how tired you looked some mornings despite hiding it from everyone else." "Not everyone else," Ronan said. "You saw." "Yes. And you wrote about it. To yourself, you said, as a way of processing what you observed." Fenna nodded. "I write letters when I can't say things aloud. It helps me understand what I'm feeling. Makes it more manageable somehow, seeing thoughts on paper instead of spinning in my head." "Do you still have them, the other letters?" "I burned them," she confessed, "after the mistake with the first one. I was terrified that somehow another would end up in your hands, so I destroyed all the evidence." "All of them?" "All of them." Ronan's expression shifted, something that looked almost like loss. "That's a shame. I would have liked to read them." The admission hung between them, too honest and raw for the careful dance they were supposed to be doing. "I could," Fenna started, then stopped. This was madness. She was standing on a pier with the Alpha King, discussing whether to continue writing inappropriate letters about him. About them. "You could?" he encouraged. "I could write new ones," she said, the words tumbling out before caution could stop them. "If you wanted, though it seems strange now writing to someone who knows I'm writing about them." "Strange," Ronan agreed, "but perhaps good strange. The kind of strange that changes things." The sun had nearly set now, painting the water in deep purples and blues. Fenna shivered, not from cold, but from the enormity of what was happening here. "I should warn you," Ronan said, his voice dropping to that lower register she'd noted in her letter. "If you agree to this, to writing, to whatever this becomes, there will be complications." "I'm aware." "No, I don't think you are." He stepped closer, and Fenna's breath caught. "I'm the Alpha King of the Western Reaches. Every action I take is scrutinized, analyzed, weaponized by those who want power or those who want to protect me from myself. If anyone discovers I'm corresponding with the town scribe, they'll say I'm trying to gain influence," Fenna finished, "that I'm using feminine wiles to manipulate you, that I'm overstepping my station and need to be put back in my place." Ronan's jaw tightened. "Yes." "I've dealt with worse," Fenna said, though her stomach knotted at the thought. "Do you know how hard it was to become a scribe as a woman? The examination committee tried to fail me 3 times. They claimed my handwriting was too flowery, too feminine, that I'd make emotional rather than accurate records, that I'd distract the male clerks with my presence." "How did you change their minds?" "I didn't." Her smile was sharp. "I outperformed every male candidate by such a wide margin they couldn't justify failing me without exposing their bias. Then I spent 5 years being twice as good to be considered half as competent." Ronan studied her with new intensity. "You're tougher than you look." "I have to be." "And you're willing to face that scrutiny again? For this?" Fenna considered the question seriously. Was she? Was the possibility of connection worth the guaranteed backlash? She thought of her office, her carefully ordered life, the safe predictability of professional distance. Then she thought of the letter in her drawer, the one she'd burned, and the relief she'd felt putting those observations on paper. Being honest, even if only with herself. "I don't know," she said finally. "Ask me again after we've talked for more than 5 minutes." Ronan laughed, a real laugh, surprised out of him. The sound was deeper than his speaking voice, rough around the edges like he didn't use it often. "Fair enough," he said. "Then let's talk. Walk with me?" He offered his arm. Fenna stared at it for a heartbeat, this casual gesture that was anything but casual from an Alpha King. Then she slipped her hand through the crook of his elbow, feeling the solid warmth of him through the fabric. They walked slowly along the pier toward the shore, the wooden boards creaking beneath their feet. "Tell me something," Ronan said. "Something not in your letter. Something I don't know." Fenna thought, "I collect broken things." "Broken things?" "Teacups with chipped rims, books with torn pages, furniture with wobbly legs. I repair them or I learn to use them despite the damage. Mrs. Dalton, my housekeeper, thinks I'm eccentric." "Why do you do it?" "Because broken doesn't mean worthless," Fenna said simply. "And sometimes the cracks are what make something interesting." She felt Ronan's arm tense slightly under her hand. When she glanced up, his expression was unreadable. "Your turn," she said. "Tell me something I don't know." He was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then, "I hate being touched." Fenna's hand started to withdraw from his arm, but he covered it with his own, holding it in place. "Not by you," he amended. "I mean in general. Courtiers who want favor. Advisors who use physical closeness to establish dominance. Women who think proximity to power makes them powerful. Everyone wants something, and touch is how they try to take it. But not me." "You wrote about my hands," Ronan said, his thumb tracing an absent pattern on her knuckles. "But you never tried to hold them. You observed from distance, respected boundaries. Even now, you were ready to let go the moment I said I disliked touch." "Because consent matters," Fenna said, "even in small things, especially in small things." They'd reached the shore now, where the pier met the cobblestone harbor walk. A few late workers moved in the distance, securing boats and hauling nets, but no one paid attention to the couple in unremarkable clothes sharing quiet conversation. Invisible. Anonymous. Free. "I have a question," Fenna said as they turned to walk along the waterfront. "Why did you really want to meet? What do you hope comes from this?" Ronan was quiet for a long moment, his hand still covering hers on his arm. "Honestly, I don't know. I just know that when I read your letter, something in my chest that's been tight for years loosened slightly, like I'd been holding my breath without realizing, and you gave me permission to exhale." Fenna understood that feeling, had felt it herself when she'd written the letter, putting words to observations she'd carried in silence. "And I'm tired," Ronan continued, "tired of performing kingship every waking moment. Tired of measuring every word, every gesture, every expression for maximum political impact. Tired of being alone in rooms full of people." "You're performing now too, though," Fenna pointed out gently. "Dressed like a merchant, meeting in secret. This is its own kind of theater." "Is it?" He stopped walking, turning to face her. "Because it doesn't feel like performance. It feels like the first honest thing I've done in months." The intensity in his eyes made Fenna's heart stammer. "What do you want from me?" she asked quietly. "I want you to keep seeing me," Ronan said, "the way you did in that letter. Not the king, not the role, just me. However that happens. Letters, meetings, whatever form it takes. I want to be known by someone who asks nothing in return." "Everyone wants something," Fenna said. "You said so yourself." "Then what do you want?" The question hung between them like a held breath. What did she want? Safety, certainly. Stability. The respect she'd fought so hard to earn, all things that would be threatened by whatever this was becoming. But she also wanted what he described. To be seen. To drop the careful performance of competent scribe who never makes mistakes, and be simply Fenna, complicated and curious and occasionally foolish. "I want to stop being careful all the time," she said finally. "I want to write letters that tell the truth instead of hiding it. I want to have conversations that matter instead of just being professionally pleasant. I want—" She laughed, a little helplessly. "I want to know if your knuckles hurt on cold mornings, and whether you remember how you got that scar, and what you sound like when you're not measuring every word for political impact." Ronan's hand tightened on hers. "My knuckles do ache when it's cold," he said. "The scar is from my older brother who hit me with a training sword when I was 8 because I wouldn't yield in a sparring match. And when I'm not measuring my words, I talk too much about things no one cares about: battle strategy, crop rotation, the economics of road maintenance." Fenna smiled. "I care about those things." "Do you?" "I'm a scribe. Information is my currency. Tell me about crop rotation." "Now?" Why not now? So there, walking along the harbor as stars began to prick through the darkening sky, the Alpha King of the Western Reaches told a town scribe about 3-field systems and soil nutrients and winter wheat yields. His voice lost its careful modulation, becoming animated, almost eager, as he described irrigation challenges and pest management solutions. Fenna listened, genuinely interested, occasionally asking questions that made him stop and think before answering. It was absurd and perfect and nothing like what either of them should be doing. They walked for over an hour, their conversation meandering from agriculture to architecture to the challenges of maintaining infrastructure across vast territories. Ronan asked about her work, and Fenna found herself describing the satisfaction of perfect handwriting, the puzzle of organizing complex information, the quiet pleasure of preserving history through careful record-keeping. "You love it," Ronan observed. "Your work." "I do," Fenna agreed. "Even when it's difficult, even when I have to fight to be taken seriously. There's something profoundly important about creating accurate records, about ensuring that what happened doesn't get lost or twisted or forgotten." "You're preserving truth." "In my small way, yes." "It's not small," Ronan said. "Truth is never small." They'd circled back to the pier without realizing it. The moon had risen, casting silver light across the water. The harbor was quiet now, the workers gone home to dinner and warm fires. Fenna knew she should leave. It was late. Mrs. Dalton would worry, and every additional moment she spent with Ronan was another risk, another chance of discovery. But she didn't want to leave, didn't want this strange, honest conversation to end. "I should go," she made herself say. "I know." Neither of them moved. "Fenna," Ronan said, and there was a question in the way he spoke her name. "Yes?" "Will you write to me? Truly? Not just about observations, but conversations, things you think about, questions you have, whatever you would say if we could do this every evening." "And you'll write back?" "Yes." "It's still risky," Fenna warned. "If the letters are intercepted, I'll have them delivered by personal courier, only to me, only from you." His hand still covered hers, warm despite the cooling night. "Please." Fenna thought of her empty office tomorrow, the careful distance she maintained from everyone. Thought of burning letters in candlelight, destroying honesty to maintain safety. Thought of this conversation that fed something in her she hadn't realized was starving. "Yes," she said. "I'll write." Ronan's smile transformed his face, making him look younger, less burdened. "Thank you." He raised her hand to his lips, a formal gesture, courtly, but his eyes held nothing formal at all. They held heat and hope and hunger that made Fenna's breath catch. Then he released her and stepped back, restoring the careful distance between them. "Good night, Fenna Ashcroft." "Good night, Ronan Hartwell." She turned and walked away, feeling his gaze on her back like a physical touch. Didn't let herself look back until she'd reached the cobblestone street leading to the town center. When she finally glanced over her shoulder, he was still standing there, a dark silhouette against the moonlit water. Watching her leave the way she'd watched him in council chambers, with attention that went beyond casual observation into something deeper, something dangerous. Fenna's hands were shaking by the time she reached her small house on the edge of town. Mrs. Dalton had left the lamps burning, a covered plate of food on the table, and a note saying she'd gone to visit her sister, alone. Finally alone to process what had just happened. Fenna sank into her chair, staring at the cold food without seeing it. Her skin felt too tight, her pulse too fast. She'd just agreed to correspond with the Alpha King, agreed to continue a relationship that could destroy her career if discovered. Was she insane? Probably. But when she thought of Ronan's voice losing its careful control as he talked about crop rotation, the way his eyes had held hers when he asked her to keep writing, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. She was reaching for parchment and quill before she consciously decided to write. The words flowed easier this time, without the guilt of secrecy. He knew. He wanted this. She wasn't stealing glances and hoarding observations anymore. She was participating in something mutual. "Ronan," she wrote, "I walked home thinking about your hands. Not the way I did before. Secret observation from across a room, but the memory of how they felt covering mine. Warm, slightly rough. Real. You asked what I want from this. I want more of tonight. More conversations that wander from crop rotation to record keeping without either of us performing for an audience. More of your voice without its careful king modulation. More of you being you and me being me without the weight of expectations crushing both of us into acceptable shapes. I want to know about your brother with the training sword, whether you forgave him, whether he's still in your life or if duty pulled you apart. I want to tell you that I'm terrified of what we're doing, that I spent 5 years building credibility and we're risking it on secret meetings and letters that could be intercepted. That part of me thinks I should end this now before it goes any further. But I won't. Because the other part of me, the part that collects broken things and sees beauty in cracks, that part knows this matters, this connection, this seeing and being seen. So yes, I'll write, and I'll wait for your words in return. Yours, Fenna. She sealed the letter and set it aside for morning delivery. Then she finally ate the cold food Mrs. Dalton had left, suddenly ravenous. Sleep came easier than expected, and her dreams were full of gray eyes and conversations under stars. The next morning, Fenna arrived at the town hall to find chaos. Miss Ashcroft, thank the heavens! The receptionist nearly ran to meet her. Lord Weimar is here. He's demanding to see the council records from 3 months ago, and he's in a right fury about something. Fenna's stomach dropped. Lord Weimar, the very councilman Ronan's hand had tightened against when he spoke during meetings. What does he want with the records? Won't say. Just keeps insisting it's a matter of royal importance and you're to produce them immediately. Fenna forced her voice to remain calm. Show him to my office. I'll handle it. Lord Weimar was a thick man with a thick beard and thicker sense of self-importance. He stood in her office like he owned it, his fingers drumming impatiently on her desk. Lord Weimar, Fenna said, inclining her head the precise degree required by protocol. How may I assist you? The council records, he said without preamble, from the last 3 months. Specifically, any correspondence or documents related to meetings with His Majesty. May I ask why? His eyes narrowed. You may not. This is official business. Fenna felt ice creep down her spine. Did he know? Had someone seen her with Ronan? I'm afraid I need more specific information, she said, keeping her voice level. We have extensive records from the past 3 months. Council minutes, property disputes, trade agreements, correspondence. All of it, Weimar interrupted. Anything that passed through this office to the palace. That's quite a large request, my lord. It will take time to compile. Then start now. He leaned forward, his breath sour. I don't know what game you think you're playing, girl, but some of us are paying attention. Fenna's blood turned to ice. I'm not sure I understand what you mean. Don't you? Strange how a simple town scribe suddenly merits personal correspondence from His Majesty. Strange how certain irregularities in document handling seem to coincide with increased royal attention. He knew. Maybe not everything, but enough to be dangerous. I assure you, Lord Weimar, there have been no irregularities in my record keeping. Everything I send to the palace follows proper protocol. Does it? His smile was ugly. Then you won't mind my reviewing every document, every letter, every scrap of paper that's left this office in the past 3 months. Fenna's mind raced. The letter. Her original letter had been sent with official documents. If Weimar was thorough enough, if he questioned the palace staff about what had been received. This is highly irregular, she said. As town scribe, I operate under the authority of the municipal charter, not the royal council. You have no jurisdiction over my records without proper cause and documentation. Weimar's face darkened. Are you refusing a direct order from a member of the king's council? I'm following protocol, my lord. If you have specific concerns about impropriety, file a formal complaint with the municipal authorities. They will conduct an investigation according to proper procedure. But I will not hand over 3 months of records to satisfy what appears to be personal curiosity. Personal curiosity? Weimar's voice rose. I'm protecting His Majesty from potential manipulation, from women who think they can use their position to gain improper access to… That's enough. The new voice came from the doorway. Cold, authoritative, unmistakably royal. Ronan stood there, still in his formal court clothes, 2 guards flanking him. His expression was carved from ice. Your Majesty, Weimar stammered, his face going pale. I was just harassing my scribe, Ronan finished. demanding records you have no authority to access, making accusations without evidence. He stepped into the office, and despite his relatively average height, he suddenly filled the room. "Would you care to explain yourself, Lord Vaymar?" "Sire, I only meant to... There have been rumors." "Rumors!" Ronan's voice could have frozen fire. "You're disrupting official business based on rumors?" "Not rumors, Your Majesty. Concerns. About proper protocol being followed. Miss Ashcroft is the most meticulous record-keeper I've encountered in 5 years of rule," Ronan said. "If you have specific evidence of impropriety, present it. Otherwise, you're wasting her time and mine." Vaymar's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. "I thought not," Ronan said. "You're dismissed, Lord Vaymar. And if I hear of you harassing my staff again without proper cause, we'll have a more serious conversation about your position on the council." Vaymar fled, his face mottled red with humiliation and rage. The moment he was gone, Fenna's knees went weak. She gripped the edge of her desk for support. "Are you all right?" Ronan asked, his voice immediately losing its icy edge. "I think so. How did you... Why are you... I was at the municipal offices reviewing tax assessments when I heard Vaymar was here, demanding records and making a scene. I came immediately." His jaw was tight. "I'm sorry. This is exactly what I warned you about." "He knows something," Fenna said quietly. "Not everything, maybe, but enough to be suspicious." Vaymar is always suspicious. He sees conspiracies in his breakfast porridge. But Ronan's expression was troubled. "Still, we need to be more careful. If he's watching you, if he's watching me, then our correspondence is dangerous," Fenna finished. "Every letter a potential weapon." They stared at each other across her desk, the weight of reality crushing the fragile possibility they'd built last night. "Do you want to stop?" Ronan asked finally. "Before this gets worse?" Fenna thought of Vaymar's ugly smile, his accusations, the years she'd spent building credibility that could be destroyed in moments. Thought of the inevitable scrutiny if their correspondence continued, the whispers and innuendo and deliberate misunderstanding. Then she thought of last night, of crop rotation and broken teacups and being seen. "No," she said, "but we need to be smarter about it." Something fierce and bright lit Ronan's eyes. "Agreed. The letters can't come through normal channels. No official couriers." "I have a man," Ronan said. "Discreet, completely trustworthy. He can deliver directly to you, no intermediaries. And I won't send through the town hall. I'll have them delivered to..." Fenna thought quickly. "There's a bookshop on Market Street. The owner is an old friend. I could leave letters with her, and your courier could collect them there." "Good. What else?" "No more public meetings. The pier was too exposed." "There's a garden," Ronan said, "behind the palace in the eastern quarter. Overgrown, mostly forgotten. I could meet you there in the evenings. Too risky. If you're seen leaving the palace regularly, then you're right. Letters only, for now." The disappointment in his voice echoed in Fenna's chest. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know this isn't what either of us wanted." "No," Ronan agreed, "but it's safer. And safety matters when the alternative is..." He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. They both knew what the alternative was. Scandal, ruin, for her certainly, possibly for him. "I should go," Ronan said reluctantly. "Being seen here too long will only fuel Vaymar's suspicions." "Yes," but neither of them moved. "Write to me," Ronan said finally. "Tonight. Tell me what you're thinking, what you're feeling. Don't hide it." "I won't." "Promise?" "I promise." He held her gaze a moment longer, and in his eyes Fenna saw the same hunger she felt, for connection, for honesty, for the dangerous possibility of being known. Then he turned and left, his guards falling into step behind him, and Fenna was alone in her office with her racing heart, and the letter she'd written last night still waiting to be delivered. She pulled it from her bag and stared at the seal. Everything in it was true. Everything in it was dangerous. She could burn it now. End this before it truly began. Choose safety over risk, propriety over possibility. Instead, Fenna Ashcroft tucked the letter into her sleeve and went to visit her friend who owned a bookshop on Market Street. The bookshop smelled of old paper and lavender, dust motes dancing in the afternoon light that slanted through tall windows. Mira Thornfeld looked up from the ledger she was updating, her sharp eyes immediately noting the tension in Fenna's posture. "Trouble?" she asked without preamble. They'd been friends since childhood, long enough to skip pleasantries. "Possibly." Fenna glanced around the empty shop. "I need a favor. A significant one." Mira set down her pen. "How significant?" "The kind that could bring royal attention to your shop." "Ah." Mira's expression didn't change, but her fingers drummed once against the counter. "I see. And would this royal attention be the beneficial kind, or the burn-your-business-down kind?" "I honestly don't know yet." "Well, that's refreshingly honest." Mira came around the counter, flipping the sign on the door to closed. "Tell me everything." So Fenna did. Not everything. She kept the details of her conversations with Ronan private, but enough. The letter. The meeting. Veymar's suspicions. The need for a secure way to exchange correspondence without official channels. When she finished, Mira was quiet for a long moment. "You're in love with him," she said finally. No, it's not. We've barely spoken." "Fenna." Mira's voice was gentle. "I've known you since we were 7 years old. I've watched you be careful and controlled and professional for your entire adult life. This?" She gestured at Fenna's flushed face, her agitated hands. "This is not careful. This is terrified and exhilarated and completely, utterly smitten." Fenna opened her mouth to protest, then closed it. Was Mira right? Love seemed too strong a word for whatever this was. This pull towards someone who saw her, who wanted to be seen in return. But it was something powerful enough to make her risk everything she'd built. "Maybe," she admitted quietly. "Maybe I am. Then I'll help." Mira squeezed her hand, though I reserve the right to say, "I told you this was madness," when it all goes sideways. Deal. They worked out the details quickly. Fenna would bring letters during regular visits. She bought books often enough that additional trips wouldn't raise suspicion. She'd slip the sealed letter inside whatever book she purchased. Mira would keep it in a specific location behind the counter, and Ronan's courier could collect it discreetly when purchasing his own books. "Clever," Mira said approvingly, "though I'm charging you full price for the books. Supporting a royal romance is one thing, but I still have a business to run." Fenna laughed despite her nerves. "Fair enough." She left the bookshop with a copy of agricultural treatises, fitting given last night's conversation, and the letter safely deposited with Mira. Walking back through Ashenir's narrow streets, Fenna felt the weight of what she'd set in motion. There was no going back now. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of correspondence that grew increasingly intimate. Ronan's letters arrived every few days, delivered by a nondescript man who purchased poetry collections and never spoke beyond polite greetings. Fenna's responses flowed faster than she'd expected, her careful handwriting filling page after page. They wrote about everything. Ronan described the crushing weight of council meetings where everyone wanted something and no one said what they meant. Fenna wrote about the satisfaction of organizing chaos into order, making sense of the world through careful record-keeping. He told her about his brother, not just the Scar incident, but years of complicated relationship between royal siblings, duty pulling them in different directions until they barely recognized each other anymore. She told him about her parents, both dead before she turned 20, and the loneliness of building a life alone in a world that didn't trust women to do important work. "I miss them most at night," she wrote. "When I've accomplished something and there's no one to tell. When I've failed and there's no one to comfort me. I've become so self-sufficient that sometimes I forget what it feels like to lean on someone else." His response came faster than usual. "Lean on me. Through these letters, through whatever this becomes. You don't have to carry everything alone." The words unlocked something in Fenna's chest that she'd kept carefully sealed for years, but while their correspondence deepened, the world around her grew increasingly hostile. Weimar had not forgotten his humiliation. Worse, he'd apparently shared his suspicions with others on the council. Fenna began noticing pointed looks when she attended meetings to record minutes, whispers that stopped when she entered rooms, a coldness from officials who'd previously been cordial. Jacob noticed too. "Miss Ashcroft, some of the clerks are saying strange things about you and the palace, about inappropriate," he flushed, I told them they were being ridiculous, but— Thank you, Jacob, Fenna interrupted gently. Gossip will always find something to feed on. Best to ignore it. But ignoring became impossible when the municipal council called her to a formal hearing. The summons arrived on a cold morning in late autumn, official and ominous. Fenna was to appear before the council in 3 days to address concerns regarding professional conduct and potential conflicts of interest in her position as town scribe. Her hands shook as she read it. This was it. The reckoning she'd known was coming. She wrote to Ronan immediately, her script less controlled than usual. They're calling a hearing. I don't know what evidence they have, but Weimar must have convinced enough council members to make this official. I'm frightened, Ronan, not of losing my position, though that terrifies me, but of what they'll do to protect you, of what they'll say about us, about me, of becoming the cautionary tale of a woman who reached above her station and paid the price. His response arrived that same evening, delivered with unusual urgency. Don't go to the hearing. Come to the palace. Now, tonight. I can protect you here. Fenna stared at the letter, her heart hammering. Run to the palace? Accept royal protection? That would confirm every suspicion, validate every accusation. It would be surrender. She wrote back quickly. I can't run. If I do, they win. They get to say I'm guilty without defense, that I was using my position inappropriately. I have to face this. Then I'll come to the hearing, testify on your behalf. No, that makes it worse. That makes it look like you're involved. Like we're— She paused, staring at the half-finished sentence. Like we're what? Having an affair? In love? Both were true in their way. Neither was something she could admit. She started again. Your presence would only confirm their suspicions. I have to do this alone. The reply came back within hours. You are not alone. Even if I can't be there physically, you are not alone. The words steadied her, but they couldn't change reality. The night before the hearing, Fenna barely slept. She rehearsed responses to potential accusations, organized her documentation of every official communication with the palace, prepared herself for the worst. Mrs. Dalton found her at dawn, still dressed, staring at papers spread across her kitchen table. Oh, child, the older woman said softly, you'll wear yourself to bones. I have to be ready. They're going to try to destroy me, and you need rest and breakfast, and to remember that you've done nothing wrong. Haven't I? Fenna's voice cracked. I developed feelings for someone I shouldn't. I wrote letters that crossed professional boundaries. I met him in secret. You wrote honest words to someone who appreciated them, Mrs. Dalton corrected firmly. You had conversations with a man who values your mind. Those aren't crimes, Fenna. They're human. But I'm not supposed to be human. I'm supposed to be the competent, unimpeachable town scribe who never makes mistakes. That's an impossible standard, one they'd never hold a man to. Fenna knew she was right, knew the double standard was part of the trap. But knowing didn't make it easier to face. The hearing was scheduled for 2 o'clock in the council chamber, the same room where Fenna had spent months watching Ronan during official meetings. The irony wasn't lost on her. She arrived early, dressed in her most severe professional attire, her hair pulled back ruthlessly, every piece of documentation organized in her leather case. If they wanted the perfect image of a scribe, she'd give them one. The council chamber filled slowly. Municipal officials, town clerks, and, her stomach dropped, several members of the royal council, including Weimar. His smile was triumphant. The hearing began with formal accusations read by the council head, a reed-thin man named Garrett, who'd always been fair to her before. Now his voice was carefully neutral as he outlined the charges. Fenna Ashcroft, you are called before this council to address concerns regarding your conduct as town scribe. Specifically, improper correspondence with royal officials, potential misuse of your position to gain personal access to the palace, and conduct unbecoming a municipal officer. Each word landed like a physical blow. How do you respond to these charges? Fenna stood, forcing her voice to remain steady. I deny any impropriety. All correspondence with the palace has followed proper protocols. I have documentation of every official communication, each appropriately sealed and recorded. Official communication, yes, Weimar interrupted, rising from his seat. But what of unofficial communication, Miss Ashcroft? Personal letters sent through irregular channels? The room went silent. I'm not aware of any regulation prohibiting personal correspondence, Fenna said carefully. Personal correspondence with the Alpha King? Veymar's voice dripped with false concern. Surely you understand how that appears. A young woman, unmarried, corresponding privately with a powerful man, using your position to facilitate access that would otherwise be impossible. I have never used my position inappropriately. Haven't you? He pulled a paper from his jacket. We have testimony from a bookshop owner, Miss Thornfeld, who reports that you've been making unusual purchases over the past weeks. Books delivered to her shop by palace couriers, letters exchanged through her establishment. Fenna's blood turned to ice. Mira. They'd gotten to Mira. Miss Thornfeld is a friend, she said, fighting to keep her voice level. I purchase books from her regularly. There's nothing unusual about that. Nothing unusual about the frequency? The timing? The palace courier who visits like clockwork, always purchasing books but leaving with more than he came with? They'd been watching. Carefully, methodically watching and documenting everything. Lord Weimar, Garrett interrupted, do you have actual evidence of wrongdoing or merely suspicious timing? I have this. Weimar produced another paper and Fenna's heart stopped. Her letter. One of her letters to Ronan, broken seal and all. This was found among the official palace documents, Weimar said, his voice triumphant, mixed in with legitimate correspondence from the town scribe's office. A personal, intimate letter describing the Alpha King in highly inappropriate terms. Where did you get that? Fenna demanded, her voice shaking with fury and fear. That was private correspondence. Private correspondence that went through official channels, making it subject to review. That was a mistake. It was never meant a mistake? Weimar's eyebrows rose. Or the beginning of a calculated attempt to seduce the Alpha King? To use your position and your feminine attributes to gain power and influence? The room erupted in murmurs. That's absurd, Fenna said, but her voice was drowned out. Is it? Weimar pressed. You're an unmarried woman, no family connections, no real power. But catch the king's attention, manipulate his emotions, and suddenly you have access to the most powerful man in the western reaches. It's a tale as old as time. I never manipulated. Then explain the letters, explain the secret meetings, explain why you've been corresponding with the Alpha King through irregular channels. Fenna opened her mouth, but no words came. What could she say? That she'd fallen for him? That their correspondence was real and honest and nothing like the calculated seduction Weimar described? That would only make it worse. The silence stretched, damning. Then the chamber doors slammed open. Ronan strode in, still in riding clothes, mud on his boots, breathing hard like he'd run the entire way from the palace. 2 guards flanked him, but he waved them back. Enough, he said, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Every person in the room immediately stood, bowing. Fenna's legs barely held her. Your Majesty, Garrett stammered. We didn't expect... This is a municipal matter. A municipal matter concerning correspondence with me, Ronan interrupted, which makes it my concern. Lord Weimar, you will hand over that letter immediately. Weimar hesitated. Sire, this is evidence of... That is a private letter, obtained illegally, and you will surrender it now or face charges of theft and invasion of royal privacy. The threat in Ronan's voice was unmistakable. Weimar, face white, handed over the letter. Ronan took it without looking at the content, his jaw tight with fury. Then he turned to address the room. Fenna Ashcroft is one of the most competent professional officials I have encountered in 5 years of rule. Her record-keeping is flawless. Her conduct has been exemplary. If I have chosen to correspond with her, it is because I value her intelligence, her insight, and her integrity. But sire, Weimar tried, the nature of the correspondence is none of your concern, Ronan said flatly. Miss Ashcroft has committed no crime. She has violated no regulation. Your accusations are based on jealousy and small-minded prejudice, not evidence. Fenna's heart hammered. He was defending her, but in doing so, he was confirming their relationship, making it real and undeniable in front of everyone. Your Majesty, Garrett said carefully, we appreciate your confidence in Miss Ashcroft, but surely you understand our concern. The appearance of impropriety. The appearance, Ronan interrupted, his voice dropping to something cold and dangerous, is created by those looking for scandal rather than truth. Miss Ashcroft and I have corresponded. That correspondence is private, consensual, and entirely appropriate. Appropriate? Weimar couldn't help himself. Personal letters between a king and a common scribe are appropriate? The room froze. The insult was barely veiled. Ronan's expression didn't change, but Fenna felt the temperature drop 10 degrees. Miss Ashcroft is not common, he said quietly. She is extraordinary. And if you cannot see that, Lord Weimar, the failure is yours, not hers. Then he did something that stopped Fenna's breath entirely. He crossed the room and took her hand. Right there, in front of the entire council, the Alpha King took the hand of the town scribe and held it like it was precious. I came here to end the speculation, Ronan said, addressing the room but looking at Fenna. To make clear what I should have made clear weeks ago. Ronan, Fenna whispered. Don't! I have been corresponding with Fenna Ashcroft, he continued, because I find her company invaluable. Because her observations are sharp and her honesty is refreshing. Because in a world of people who tell me what they think I want to hear, she tells me the truth. His thumb traced her knuckles, the gesture intimate and unmistakable. And yes, my feelings have become personal. Deeper than professional respect. I will not apologize for that, nor will I allow her to be persecuted for it. The room was utterly silent. Your Majesty, Garrett said faintly, are you declaring, I'm saying that Fenna Ashcroft is under my personal protection. Any further harassment, any attempts to damage her reputation or position will be treated as a direct offense against me. His eyes swept the room, daring anyone to challenge him. Are we clear? Murmurs of assent rippled through the crowd. Good. This hearing is concluded. Miss Ashcroft is exonerated of all charges. He turned to Garrett. See that it's entered into the official record. Then, still holding Fenna's hand, Ronan walked her out of the council chamber, leaving a room full of stunned officials in their wake. They made it to an empty corridor before Fenna's legs gave out. She sagged against the wall, shaking. What did you do? She whispered. Ronan, what did you just do? Protected you. You exposed us. You confirmed everything they suspected. Her voice broke. You made it real, public, undeniable. Good. Good? She stared at him. Do you understand what this means? The scrutiny, the scandal, I understand perfectly. He cupped her face in his hands, those scarred hands she'd written about, his touch gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. I understand that I'm tired of hiding, tired of pretending that what we have is something to be ashamed of. But your position, my position is secure. Yours might have been destroyed if I hadn't intervened. Was I supposed to stand by and let them tear you apart? I could have defended myself against Weimar with a stolen letter, against accusations designed to ruin you no matter how you responded. His jaw tightened. No, I would not let that happen. Fenna's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. You've made me a target. Everyone will say I manipulated you, that I... Let them say it. I know the truth. You know the truth. That's what matters. Is it? She pulled away from his touch, needing space to think. Ronan, you're the Alpha King. Everything you do is political. This declaration, it's not just about us. It's a statement about who has access to you, about the kind of relationships you allow yourself. The council will see it as weakness. Let them. You don't mean that, don't I? He leaned against the opposite wall, suddenly looking exhausted. For 5 years, I've made every decision based on political calculation, every relationship measured by strategic value, every moment of my life performed for maximum authority and minimum vulnerability. His voice dropped. And I'm so tired, Fenna, so tired of being alone inside my own life. You wrote about seeing me, about noticing the small things that reveal the person beneath the crown. Do you know how rare that is? How precious? But at what cost? At any cost. The words were fierce, certain. I would rather have 6 months of being truly known by you than 60 years of perfectly maintained political distance. Fenna's breath caught. You're not thinking clearly. The hearing, the confrontation, you're reacting emotionally. Yes, Ronan agreed. I am. And it's the first honest thing I've done in years. They stared at each other across the corridor, the weight of what had just happened settling over them like snow. What happens now? Fenna asked finally. Now? Ronan straightened. Now we stop hiding. We continue corresponding, but we do it openly. You write to me, I write to you, and anyone who has a problem with it can take it up with me directly. And my position as scribe? Secure. I'll have it confirmed in writing if necessary. People will still talk. People always talk. He crossed back to her, taking her hands again. But they'll talk regardless. At least this way we're honest about what we are to each other. And what are we? Fenna whispered. Ronan was quiet for a moment, his thumbs tracing patterns on her wrists. I don't know yet, he admitted, but I want to find out. Without fear, without hiding. Will you let me? Every practical instinct screamed at Fenna to refuse, to step back, rebuild her professional distance, protect what remained of her reputation. But she thought of his letters, of conversations that felt like coming home, of being seen in return. Yes, she heard herself say, yes, I will. Ronan's smile transformed his face, and before Fenna could process what was happening, he pulled her close and kissed her. It was brief, almost chaste, but it sent fire racing through her veins. When he pulled back, his eyes held a heat that made her dizzy. I should take you home, he said, his voice rough. Before I do something else completely inappropriate in a public corridor. Fenna laughed, slightly hysterical. I think we're past worrying about appropriate. Fair point. He insisted on escorting her personally, which meant walking through Ashenir with the Alpha King at her side, his guards trailing at a discreet distance. People stared. Of course they stared. By tomorrow, the entire town would know. When they reached her small house, Ronan hesitated at the gate. Fenna, he said quietly, I need you to understand something. What I did today, declaring our relationship publicly, I didn't do it lightly. And I didn't do it just to protect you. No? No. He took her hand again, that gesture that was becoming familiar and precious. I did it because I'm falling in love with you. Have been since I read that first letter. Maybe since the first time you looked at me in a council meeting, like you actually saw me instead of the crown. Fenna's heart stopped, then stuttered back to life. Ronan, you don't have to say anything, he interrupted gently. I just needed you to know, needed you to understand that this isn't political calculation or strategic relationship building. This is me, choosing you, consequences be damned. He raised her hand to his lips, that courtly gesture that had private heat behind it now, and then left, walking back toward the palace with his guards, leaving Fenna standing at her gate with her world completely transformed. She went inside, closed the door, leaned against it. Mrs. Dalton appeared from the kitchen, took one look at Fenna's face, and simply opened her arms. Fenna fell into them, finally letting the tears come. Oh, child, Mrs. Dalton murmured. What have you gotten yourself into? I don't know, Fenna sobbed. I don't know, but I can't stop it. I don't want to stop it. Then don't. Mrs. Dalton stroked her hair. Sometimes the only way forward is through. That night, Fenna tried to write to Ronan but couldn't find the words. Everything felt too big, too overwhelming, too real. Instead, she sat at her desk and stared at the blank parchment, her mind spinning with everything that had changed in a single day. She was in love with the Alpha King, and he was in love with her, and the entire Western Reaches now knew about it. When she finally fell into bed near midnight, exhausted and wrung out, she noticed something strange. There was ink on her wrist, a few lines of text that hadn't been there before. She sat up, bringing her arm closer to the candlelight. The words were in Ronan's handwriting. You are not alone. Fenna stared at the impossible thing, ink appearing on her skin, words she hadn't written, in a hand she knew as well as her own. With shaking fingers, she picked up her pen and wrote on her other wrist, What is this? She watched, breathless, as more words appeared beneath hers, flowing across her skin like water. I don't know, but I feel it too, like we're connected, bound. Every word I write to you appears on my skin first. Fenna's mind reeled. This was impossible. Ink didn't just appear on skin, words didn't transfer between people, but even as she thought it, she knew it was true, could feel it somehow, a tether between them, invisible but real. She wrote, "How long?" His response, "Since the first letter, I think. I thought I was imagining it. But tonight, when I defended you, I could feel your fear like it was my own." "I'm frightened," she wrote, the admission easier on skin than paper somehow. "So am I," he wrote back, "but I'm also certain. This is real, Fenna. Whatever this bond is, whatever it means, it's real." She touched the words on her wrist, feeling the slight warmth of the ink. "What do we do?" There was a pause. Then, "We find out what this means. Together. No more hiding. No more fear. Just truth." Fenna closed her eyes, feeling the bond between them like a second heartbeat. "Together," she wrote, and watched the word appear on her skin like a promise, like a fate neither of them could escape, even if they wanted to. Fenna woke the next morning to find her arms covered in words. Not just her wrists anymore. The ink had spread during the night, flowing up her forearms in elegant script. Ronan's thoughts, seemingly written as he lay awake in the palace, thinking of her. "I can't sleep. Keep replaying the hearing. Should I have stayed silent? Let you defend yourself? Or was intervention the only option that wouldn't destroy you?" And then, hours later, based on the way the ink darkened, "No, I would make the same choice. Would make it 1,000 times. You matter more than politics." Fenna traced the words with shaking fingers, feeling the warmth beneath them as though Ronan's hand still moved across her skin. She reached for her own pen, writing on the inside of her wrist where the fabric of her sleeve would hide it. "I'm looking at your words on my arms. This is impossible. Beautiful and impossible." Within moments, his response appeared. "You're awake. I've been waiting, hoping. Can you come to the palace? We need to understand what this is. People will talk. Let them. After yesterday, there's nothing left to hide." He was right, of course. The entire town had watched the Alpha King defend her, declare her extraordinary, walk her home with his guards trailing behind. Discretion was no longer an option. Mrs. Dalton appeared in her doorway with tea, took one look at Fenna's ink-covered arms, and nearly dropped the tray. "Sweet merciful, what on earth?" "I don't know." Fenna pulled her sleeves down quickly, but not before Mrs. Dalton had seen enough to go pale. "That's not natural, child. That's—" She set the tea down with shaking hands. "That's magic. Old magic. The kind from stories about bonds and fate and—" "It's just ink," Fenna said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Ink doesn't write itself on skin." Mrs. Dalton sat heavily on the bed. "Fenna, what have you gotten into?" "I honestly don't know. But Ronan wants me to come to the palace, to figure it out together." "Then you'd better go." Mrs. Dalton's voice was firm despite her obvious fear. "Whatever this is, you can't face it alone. And if anyone can protect you from the consequences of old magic, it's the Alpha King." Fenna dressed carefully, choosing long sleeves despite the mild autumn day. The ink on her arms felt like a secret she wasn't ready to share with the world, only with the one person who understood, who bore the same marks. The walk to the palace drew even more stares than yesterday. Word had spread fast. People stopped mid-conversation to watch her pass. Some faces showed curiosity, others disapproval. A few, mostly older women, held expressions Fenna recognized from her own struggles, understanding, even sympathy. The palace guards didn't question her presence. They simply bowed, actually bowed to her, and escorted her through marble corridors to a private study she'd never seen before. Ronan was pacing when she entered, his jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms covered in the same impossible ink. Her words, written in her precise script, covering his skin like elegant tattoos. He looked up when the door closed behind her, relief flooding his features. "You came." "Of course I came." Fenna crossed to him, unable to stop herself from reaching for his arms, running her fingers over her own handwriting on his skin. "When did it start for you?" "The morning after I received your first letter. I woke up with your words on my ribs." He pulled up his shirt slightly, revealing more script flowing across his side. "I thought I was losing my mind. Thought I dreamed so vividly of your letter that my imagination had manifested physically. But it kept happening. Oh, every word you wrote appeared somewhere on my body. At first I could hide it, keep my arms covered, my chest concealed, but last night, he gestured at his forearms, which were nearly black with text. After I left you, I couldn't stop writing, and every word appeared on me first, then transferred to you. Fenna pulled up her own sleeves, showing him the mirror image. What does it mean? I don't know, but I know someone who might. Ronan moved to the door, opening it to reveal an elderly woman waiting in the corridor. She was tiny, barely 5 feet tall, with white hair and eyes so dark they appeared black. Miss Ashcroft, Ronan said formally. This is Thera. She was my grandmother's advisor, and before that served as scholar to the royal family for 60 years. If anyone understands old magic, it's her. Thera entered slowly, leaning on a carved cane. Her gaze went immediately to their exposed arms, and her breath caught. Oh, she whispered. Oh, child, you found your match. My what? Fenna asked. Your soul bond, your word match. Thera moved closer, peering at the ink with wonder. I've only seen it once before, and that was 70 years ago. Two people whose connection runs so deep that their words become shared. Every truth one writes appears on the other's skin until they acknowledge the bond. Ronan's hand found Fenna's, fingers lacing together. How is that possible? The old magic doesn't follow rules of possibility, Thera said. It simply is. When two souls recognize each other, truly recognize each other, see past surface to essence, sometimes the magic responds, creates a bridge, a bond that can't be broken by distance or time. But we barely know each other, Fenna protested. We've had one real conversation, some letters, and yet you described his hands with such precision that he felt seen for the first time in years, Thera interrupted gently. And he read your observations and understood the loneliness you'd been carrying. Recognition isn't about time, child. It's about truth. Fenna looked at Ronan, seeing her own wonder and fear reflected in his eyes. What do we do? She asked Thera. You acknowledge the bond. Speak the words that make it real. Thera's expression was kind but serious. Or you can refuse it. Stop writing to each other. Stop the connection. The ink will fade, and the bond will wither. No. Ronan's voice was sharp, certain. I'm not refusing anything. Even though acknowledging it will change everything, Thera pressed. Soul bonds are rare, Your Majesty, precious. But they're also permanent. Once acknowledged, you'll feel each other's emotions, know each other's thoughts when strongly felt. There will be no hiding, no privacy of heart. I don't want to hide from her. Thera turned to Fenna. And you, child? Are you prepared for that level of intimacy? To be bound to the Alpha King not just emotionally, but magically? Fenna's mind reeled. This was beyond anything she'd imagined, beyond simple correspondence or even love. This was fate, destiny, the kind of thing that only happened in old stories. But she looked at the words on her arms, Ronan's late-night thoughts, his certainty, his declaration that she mattered more than politics, and she knew her answer. Yes, she said quietly. I'm prepared. Thera smiled, though her eyes held shadows. Then speak the acknowledgement, both of you, together. What do we say? Ronan asked. The truth. Simply the truth of what you feel, what you accept. The magic will recognize sincerity. Ronan turned to face Fenna fully, taking both her hands. The ink on their arms seemed to pulse with warmth. I see you, he said, his voice low and intense. Not as a subject or a political asset or a convenient relationship. I see Fenna Ashcroft, who collects broken things and writes truth in elegant script, who sees me in return, who made me remember what it feels like to be human instead of just a king. Fenna's throat tightened. I see you, she echoed. Not the crown or the title or the carefully maintained authority. I see Ronan Hartwell, who breaks his own knuckles rather than admit weakness, who gets passionate about crop rotation, who's been so lonely for so long that my simple observations felt like revelation. The ink on their arms began to glow, soft at first, then brighter. I accept this bond, Ronan continued, whatever it means, whatever it costs. I choose you. I choose us. I accept this bond, Fenna said, her voice shaking but clear. I choose truth over safety. I choose being known over being careful. I choose you. The light from the ink flared brilliant, almost blinding. Fenna felt something in her chest crack open, not painfully, but like a door long locked finally swinging free. She gasped as sensation flooded her. Ronan's emotions, his thoughts, the overwhelming relief and joy, and bone-deep certainty flowing through him. And she knew he felt hers too, her fear and wonder and the love she'd been too cautious to name until now. The light faded. The ink on their arms had changed. No longer random words scattered across skin, but formed into elegant patterns, almost like elaborate tattoos. His words on her arms, her words on his, permanent and beautiful. It's done, Thera said softly. The bond is acknowledged. You are matched. Fenna swayed, dizzy from the rush of shared emotion. Ronan caught her, pulling her close, and she felt his heartbeat against her cheek, and her own heart adjusting, sinking to his rhythm. What happens now? Ronan asked Thera, though he didn't release Fenna. Now you learn to live with the bond. It will settle over the next few weeks, becoming less overwhelming as you adjust. You'll always feel each other's strong emotions, pain, joy, fear, but the constant awareness will fade to something manageable. And if something happens to one of us? Fenna asked, the implications beginning to dawn. Thera's expression grew grave. Soul bonds are powerful, but they can be dangerous. If one of you is seriously harmed, the other will feel it. If one dies, she trailed off. The other dies too, Ronan finished quietly. Usually, yes. The grief and severed bond are more than most can survive. Fenna pulled back to look at Ronan. You knew that when you accepted the bond? I suspected. His hand came up to cup her face. And I accepted anyway. A life without you would be death regardless of whether my heart kept beating. The words should have terrified her. Instead, Fenna felt only certainty. The same certainty flowing through the bond from Ronan, reflecting back and forth between them like light caught between mirrors. Well, Thera said, breaking the moment, now we must deal with the political implications. Political implications? Fenna repeated. A soul bond between the Alpha King and a town scribe is unprecedented in modern times. It will change everything. Succession laws, royal protocols, your own position, Miss Ashcroft. How? Ronan's voice held an edge of challenge. For one, you cannot marry anyone else. Soul bonds supersede all other relationships. For another, Miss Ashcroft is now, functionally, your queen, whether or not there's been a formal ceremony. The words hit Fenna like ice water. I can't be queen. I'm a scribe. I have no training, no noble blood, no... You have a soul bond with the Alpha King, Thera interrupted. That supersedes blood and training. The magic has chosen. The kingdom will have to accept. The council will never allow it, Fenna said. Vaymar and the others, they already think I'm manipulating Ronan. This will confirm every suspicion. Then we prove them wrong. Ronan's voice was hard, certain. We show them that this bond makes us stronger, not weaker, that your insights and intelligence are exactly what this kingdom needs. How? By being exactly who you are. By doing what you do best, seeing truth and recording it accurately. By helping me be a better king instead of pretending to be something you're not. Fenna wanted to protest, to list all the reasons this couldn't work. But through the bond, she felt Ronan's unwavering confidence, his absolute certainty that they could face this together. And slowly, her own certainty began to build. All right, she said. What's the first step? Thera smiled. The first step is formal acknowledgement before the Royal Council. They need to know what's happened, and they need to hear it from both of you together. When? Ronan asked. Today, if possible. News of soul bonds travels fast, Your Majesty. Better they hear it from you than from rumors. Ronan nodded grimly. I'll call a council session for this afternoon. Thera, you'll attend to verify the bond. Of course. And I want Fenna seated beside me, not behind a scribe's desk, beside me, as my equal. Thera's eyes gleamed with approval. That will send a strong message. Good. It's the right message. He turned to Fenna. Can you face them? This soon after yesterday's hearing? Fenna thought of Vaymar's triumphant smile. The accusations, the stolen letter. Thought of sitting before the council again, exposed and vulnerable. Then she felt Ronan's hand squeeze hers, felt his support flowing through the bond like a tide lifting a boat. "Yes," she said. "Together, I can face anything."
Was?
The hours before the council session passed in a blur. Ronan insisted Fenna wear formal attire. Not a noble's gown, but something that commanded respect. They settled on a deep blue dress, simple but elegant, with long sleeves that covered the ink on her arms. "We'll reveal the marks during the session," Ronan decided. "Let them see the physical proof of the bond. It's harder to argue with magic." Fenna practiced what she would say, but the words felt inadequate. How did you explain a soul bond to people who'd never experienced even ordinary love? "Just tell the truth," Ronan advised. "You're good at that." When the time came, Fenna walked into the council chamber beside Ronan, not behind him. The room fell silent. Every eye tracked her movement to the chair that had been placed beside the king's throne, an unprecedented position for someone without noble rank. Weimar looked like he'd swallowed poison. Ronan called the session to order, his voice calm and authoritative. "I've called this emergency session to address events of the past 24 hours and to make a formal announcement." He paused, letting the tension build. Then, "As many of you witnessed yesterday, I publicly acknowledged my relationship with Fenna Ashcroft. What you did not witness, what even I did not fully understand at the time, was the nature of that relationship." Fenna felt him reach for her hand. She took it, their fingers intertwining. "Miss Ashcroft and I share a soul bond," Ronan continued. "A magical connection recognized and verified by royal scholar Thera, who is present today to attest to its authenticity." The room erupted. "Impossible. Soul bonds are myth. She's bewitched him somehow." Ronan's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Silence. The single word carried enough command to freeze every tongue. "Thera," Ronan said, "please explain for the council what a soul bond is and how it manifests." The elderly woman stood, leaning on her cane but speaking with absolute authority. She described the ink, the shared words, the recognition of souls, described the rarity of such bonds, the fact that they couldn't be faked or manufactured. "I have studied old magic for 60 years, Thera concluded. "I stake my reputation, my life, on the authenticity of this bond. These two are matched, soul to soul, word to word. No magic can create that, only truth." "Show them," Ronan murmured to Fenna. Together they pushed back their sleeves, revealing arms covered in elegant script. Fenna's words on Ronan's skin, his words on hers. The ink gleamed in the afternoon light filtering through the chamber's high windows. The council stared in stunned silence. "This is real," Ronan said quietly. "This bond, this connection, it's real. And it changes everything." "It changes nothing," Weimar spat, recovering his voice. "A magical trick, Lord Weimar," Ronan's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Are you suggesting that royal scholar Thera is lying? That 60 years of service to this crown mean nothing?" Weimar's face went red. "I'm suggesting that we cannot simply accept that the implications are clear," Ronan interrupted. "Fenna Ashcroft is my soul match. By the laws of old magic, which supersede human law, she is my partner in all things, which means she will be queen." The room exploded again. Fenna sat frozen, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes on her. Through the bond, she felt Ronan's determination, his absolute refusal to back down. But she also felt something else, a growing unease from several council members who weren't speaking. Not opposition exactly, something more thoughtful. "Your Majesty," one of them said finally, Lady Meridian, who Fenna knew ran the largest textile trade in the western reaches. "Soul bonds are real. I do not dispute the magic. But asking the kingdom to accept a scribe as queen, someone with no training in statecraft, no noble blood—" "I have something better than noble blood," Fenna heard herself say. Every head swiveled toward her. "I have 5 years of recording every council session, every treaty negotiation, every land dispute.
I know this kingdom's business better than most nobles who've inherited their titles without ever studying the actual work of governance. Lady Meridian's eyebrows rose. That's a bold claim. It's a true one. Fenna stood, her heart hammering but her voice steady. You want to test my knowledge? Ask me about the trade agreements with the Eastern Territories. Ask me about water rights disputes. Ask me about crop yields and tax revenues and infrastructure maintenance. I've recorded it all, analyzed it all, understood it all. Knowledge isn't the same as wisdom, Weimar sneered. No, Fenna agreed. But wisdom without knowledge is just uninformed opinion. I have the knowledge. I can learn the wisdom. Can you say the same? The challenge hung in the air. Then Lady Meridian laughed, a sharp surprise sound. She has spirit, I'll give her that. She has more than spirit, Ronan said. She has insight, intelligence, the ability to see patterns and connections that others miss. Exactly the qualities a queen needs. But the people, another council member protested. They'll never accept a common-born queen. Won't they? Ronan's eyes swept the room. This kingdom has changed. We're not the feudal territories of our grandparents' time. We value merit, competence, results. Fenna Ashcroft has proven all three. If the people can accept a woman as town scribe, a position she had to fight for, they can accept her as queen. And if they can't, Weimar demanded, then we show them why they should. Ronan's hand tightened on Fenna's. We prove that this bond, this partnership, makes the kingdom stronger. We earn their acceptance through action, not assumption. Fenna felt the shift in the room, not acceptance exactly, but a cautious willingness to consider. Several council members were nodding thoughtfully. Even those who looked skeptical no longer looked openly hostile, all except Weimar, whose expression was pure venom. I call for a vote, he said, on whether to accept this arrangement. There is nothing to vote on, Thera said sharply. Soul bonds are not subject to approval or disapproval. They simply are. The only question is whether this council will support their king or oppose him. The rebuke was clear. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. I support His Majesty, Lady Meridian said firmly. Soul bond or not, he's shown sound judgment for 5 years. I'm willing to trust it now. As am I, said another council member, then another. Not all of them. Weimar and 2 others remained silent, their disapproval obvious. But the majority had spoken. Ronan inclined his head. Thank you. Your support means more than you know. He stood, pulling Fenna up beside him. There will be a formal ceremony within the month. Until then, Miss Ashcroft will be learning the protocols and responsibilities of her new position. I expect this council's full cooperation in that education. It was a command, not a request. The session adjourned. As council members filed out, several approached to offer cautious congratulations. Lady Meridian clasped Fenna's hand warmly. You'll need allies, she said quietly. Women who've had to prove themselves in a world that didn't want us. I'll help where I can. Thank you, Fenna managed, surprised by the genuine kindness in the older woman's eyes. Weimar was the last to leave, pausing at the door to look back at them. This isn't over, he said quietly. Magic or not, bond or not, she doesn't belong here. Then he was gone. Fenna sagged against Ronan, the adrenaline finally draining away. You were magnificent, he murmured into her hair. I was terrified. I know, I felt it, but you stood anyway, spoke anyway. That's courage, Fenna. She pulled back to look at him. What have we done? A month until the ceremony? I don't even know how to be a queen. You'll learn. We'll learn together. His thumb traced her cheekbone. And in the meantime, we have this. He gestured at their ink-marked arms, at the bond that connected them, at the truth they'd made undeniable. Fenna thought of all the careful distance she'd maintained for years, all the walls she'd built to protect herself. They were gone now, burned away by magic and truth and the terrifying beauty of being completely known. Together, she said, echoing her words from last night. Together, Ronan agreed and kissed her there in the empty council chamber, sunlight streaming through windows onto their marked skin. For the first time since her parents died, Fenna Ashcroft didn't feel alone. And watching from the doorway, unseen, Thera smiled. The bond had been acknowledged, the first battle won. But the war for acceptance was just beginning. The war for acceptance began not with grand gestures, but with small, deliberate acts of proving worth. Fenna moved into the palace the day after the council session, not into the queen's chambers, those remained sealed, awaiting the formal ceremony, but into a suite of rooms adjacent to Ronan's, close enough for the bond to feel comfortable, separate enough to maintain some propriety. Mrs. Dalton came with her, installed as her personal attendant, and took one look at the opulent rooms with their silk curtains and marble floors before shaking her head. "This is madness," she muttered, unpacking Fenna's modest wardrobe into closets that could hold 50 times as much. "Complete madness." "I know," Fenna said, staring out the window at the palace gardens below. From here she could see the overgrown eastern quarter Ronan had mentioned weeks ago. "But it's the madness I chose." "That doesn't make it less mad." Fenna couldn't argue with that. The first week was brutal. Thera arrived each morning at dawn to begin Fenna's education in royal protocol, statecraft, and the complex web of alliances and rivalries that governed the western reaches. The sheer volume of information was staggering. "You must know every noble family's lineage," Thera explained, spreading genealogy charts across the study table. "Who's allied with whom? Who holds grudges? Who owes debts? Politics is memory-made strategy." Fenna's scribe training helped. She was used to absorbing and organizing vast amounts of information. But this was different from recording council minutes. This required understanding the human dynamics beneath the official words, reading between lines she'd previously just transcribed. "Lord Vaymar," Thera said, pointing to his family crest. "What do you know about him?" "He's ambitious," Fenna said immediately, resentful of those he perceives as having power he deserves. His questions during council sessions always have secondary motives, never asking what he actually wants to know, but setting traps for others to fall into. Thera's eyes gleamed. "Good. What else?" "He has 3 sons, all disappointments by his own measure. His eldest gambles. His middle son prefers books to politics. His youngest—" Fenna paused, remembering fragments of overheard conversations. "His youngest is actually brilliant, but refuses to engage in the council games that matter to his father. That's why Vaymar needs the king's favor so desperately. His own legacy is crumbling." "Excellent," Thera tapped the chart. "You see the person behind the position. That's rare and invaluable." But seeing wasn't enough. Fenna also had to learn how to navigate the social requirements of royalty. Formal dinners where every gesture carried meaning, receptions where she represented the crown, audiences where petitioners expected both authority and compassion. She made mistakes. Many of them. At her first formal dinner, she used the wrong fork and saw Vaymar smirk. At a trade negotiation, she spoke when she should have remained silent, earning sharp looks from Ronan's advisors. At a public reception, she forgot to acknowledge a duke's wife before the duke himself, causing a minor diplomatic incident. Each failure felt crushing. Each mistake seemed to confirm what Vaymar and his allies whispered in corners, that she was unqualified, unsuitable, a common scribe playing at queen. Through the bond, Ronan felt every moment of her humiliation and frustration. "You're being too hard on yourself," he said one evening, finding her in the library, surrounded by etiquette manuals and protocol guides. "Everyone makes mistakes when learning." "Not everyone's mistakes are scrutinized by an entire kingdom," Fenna said without looking up. "Not everyone's failures are used as proof they don't belong." Ronan sat beside her, gently closing the book in her hands. "Look at me." She did, reluctantly. "Do you remember what you told the council? That you had 5 years of knowledge about this kingdom's business? That was different. I was defending myself. And you were right. You know more about trade agreements and infrastructure than half the nobles combined. Yes, you're learning social protocols, but you already have the foundation. You understand how things work. The rest is just performance. Performance matters in your world. Our world," he corrected. "And yes, it matters. But substance matters more. Show them the substance, and they'll forgive the performative mistakes." Fenna wanted to believe him, but the whispers continued. Servants who'd once been neutral now served her with thinly veiled disdain. Nobles who'd been willing to wait and see now openly questioned Ronan's judgment, and Vaymar grew bolder. 2 weeks before the formal ceremony, he requested a private audience with Fenna. Ronan wanted to refuse, but Fenna insisted. "I can't hide behind you forever," she said. "If he has something to say, let him say it." They met in a small receiving room, Thera present as witness. Weimar arrived exactly on time, his expression carefully neutral. "Miss Ashcroft," he said, inclining his head the bare minimum required by courtesy. "Thank you for seeing me." "Lord Weimar, what can I do for you?" He settled into a chair without being invited, a subtle power play. "I wanted to speak with you privately about the upcoming ceremony, to offer some advice." "I'm listening." "You seem like an intelligent woman, practical, so I'll be direct." Weimar leaned forward. "You must know this can't work. A scribe becoming queen? The nobles will never truly accept you. The people might be charmed now by the novelty, but that will fade. You'll spend your entire reign fighting for legitimacy you'll never fully achieve." Fenna kept her expression neutral, though anger burned in her chest. "Is there a point to this, Lord Weimar?" "The point is that you have an opportunity to end this gracefully. Refuse the crown, cite the soul bond as a private matter that doesn't require public position. Remain the king's companion, if you must. But spare yourself and the kingdom the inevitable disaster of your queenship." "In exchange for what?" Weimar smiled. "In exchange for being left alone. No more scrutiny. No more public failures. You can live comfortably, privately, without the weight of expectations you can't meet. And Ronan? His Majesty will be free to marry appropriately, someone with the training and lineage to actually fulfill the role. The soul bond can exist without making you queen. You'd both be happier." Fenna studied him, seeing the calculation behind his sympathetic expression. This wasn't mercy, it was strategy. Get her to step aside voluntarily, and Weimar could position one of his allies as the appropriate queen candidate. "No," she said simply. Weimar's smile tightened. "You're making a mistake." "Perhaps, but it's my mistake to make." Fenna stood, signaling the audience was over. "I appreciate your concern, Lord Weimar, but I'm not stepping aside." "Then you're a fool." His veneer of politeness cracked. "You think a soul bond makes you qualified? Magic doesn't grant wisdom or competence. You're still just a scribe playing at royalty, and everyone sees it." "Yes," Fenna agreed calmly. "I am a scribe. I'm also the person who recorded every word you've said in council for 3 years, every contradiction, every manipulation, every time you've undermined the king's policies while claiming to support him." Weimar's face went pale. "I see patterns, Lord Weimar. It's what I do, and I've seen yours." She moved toward the door. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual work to do." She left him sitting there, his expression murderous. Thera followed her out, approval in her eyes. "Well played." "Was it?" Fenna's hands were shaking with adrenaline. "I just made an enemy even more determined to destroy me." "You already had that enemy. Now he knows you're not weak. That's important." That night, Fenna told Ronan about the meeting. She felt his fury through the bond even before she finished. "He threatened you, tried to manipulate you into doing what made sense from his perspective," Fenna interrupted. "He's not wrong that I'm facing an uphill battle. He's just wrong about my willingness to surrender." Ronan pulled her close, his heartbeat steadying against her cheek. "You're not going to surrender. You're going to prove him wrong so thoroughly he chokes on his own assumptions." "How?" "By doing what you suggested to the council. By showing your knowledge isn't just theoretical. By actively participating in governance." The next day, Ronan announced that Fenna would be attending all council sessions, not as scribe, but as advisor. She would have voice and vote on all matters. The council erupted in protest. "She has no authority. This violates protocol." "You can't simply grant power to—" "I can," Ronan said flatly, "and I am. Miss Ashcroft has proven her understanding of kingdom business. Her insights will be valuable. Anyone who disagrees is welcome to challenge her knowledge directly." The challenge hung in the air. No one took it. But Weimar's expression promised retribution. Fenna's first official council session was a test. She knew it. They knew it. Everyone in the room was waiting for her to fail. The topic was a trade dispute with the Eastern territories over grain prices. The Eastern lords wanted higher export tariffs. The Western merchants wanted lower. Both sides had presented their cases, and the council was deadlocked. Weimar spoke first, supporting the Eastern lords with arguments about kingdom revenue and fair compensation. His logic was sound, his presentation smooth. Then he turned to Fenna with false courtesy. Perhaps our newest council member has insights to share. Given her unique perspective, the condescension was clear. He expected her to either stay silent or fumble. Fenna stood, her heart hammering but her voice steady. I've recorded negotiations on this dispute for 8 months, she said, and I've noticed something interesting. The Eastern Lords claiming they need higher tariffs for fair compensation. 3 of them purchased new estates in the past year. Their public claims of financial hardship don't match their private spending. Silence fell. Furthermore, Fenna continued, if we raise export tariffs, we'll drive our merchants to trade with northern territories instead. We'll lose the tax revenue entirely, and the Eastern Lords will lose buyers. It's short-term gain for long-term disaster. That's speculation, Weimar said sharply. Is it? Because I've analyzed trade patterns for 5 years. Northern territories are already offering competitive rates. Our merchants are 1 tariff increase away from jumping ship entirely. She pulled out charts she'd prepared, actual data from her years of record keeping, showing trade patterns, revenue flows, merchant behavior. The solution isn't higher or lower tariffs, Fenna said. It's restructuring how we calculate them. Base it on volume rather than flat percentage. High-volume traders get lower rates, incentivizing them to stay with Western merchants. Low-volume traders pay slightly more, but not enough to drive them away. Everyone benefits. The room was utterly silent. Then Lady Meridian started laughing. That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. It's a scribe solution, Weimar sneered, manipulating numbers without understanding real-world implications. No, interrupted another council member, Lord Harwick, who'd been neutral until now. It's a practical solution that actually addresses both sides' concerns. I support it. As do I, said Lady Meridian. One by one, council members voiced support. Even those who'd been skeptical looked thoughtful rather than dismissive. Ronan's pride flooded through the bond, so strong it made Fenna's breath catch. The vote passed. Fenna's first council contribution became official policy. Weimar's expression was pure venom, but Fenna had proven something crucial. She wasn't just the king's soul match, she was valuable in her own right. The next weeks passed in a blur of similar moments. Fenna attended every session, contributing insights drawn from her years of observation. She restructured the recording system to make historical precedent easier to access. She identified patterns in petitions that revealed systematic problems requiring policy solutions rather than individual responses. Slowly, grudgingly, the council began to respect her. Not all of them. Weimar and his closest allies remained hostile. But enough shifted from opposition to cautious acceptance that the atmosphere changed. Lady Meridian became a genuine ally, teaching Fenna the unspoken rules of court politics. Lord Harwick started seeking her input before sessions. Even neutral council members began nodding when she spoke instead of waiting for her to fail. The people of Ashenir noticed too. Fenna still walked through town sometimes, visiting Mira's bookshop or checking on Jacob at the town hall. The whispers had changed from scandalized to curious to occasionally proud. Our scribe is going to be queen, she heard an old woman say to her companion. About time someone from common stock got a seat at that table. Not everyone agreed. Some still muttered about propriety and proper bloodlines, but the tide was shifting. 3 days before the ceremony, disaster struck. A delegation from the Southern Territories arrived unexpectedly, demanding an immediate audience with the king. They brought news of border raids, organized attacks on southern villages, too coordinated to be random bandits. The emergency council session was chaos. Everyone had opinions. No one had solutions. We need to send troops immediately, Weimar insisted. Show strength. We need more information first, Lady Meridian countered. Rushing in blind could trigger a larger conflict. The argument spiraled, voices rising, positions hardening. Fenna listened, watching patterns emerge. The description of the raids, timing, targets, methods, reminded her of something. She pulled out her notes from past council sessions, flipping through months of records. There. A series of petitions from southern villages 6 months ago, reporting unusual activity, strangers asking questions about guard rotations, supply routes being mapped, Small thefts that seemed insignificant individually but formed a pattern when viewed collectively. She'd recorded it all, but no one had connected the dots. "This isn't random," Fenna said, her voice cutting through the argument. "These raids were planned months in advance." The council turned to her. 6 months ago, southern villages reported suspicious activity. I have the petitions here. She spread the documents across the table. Strangers asking about defenses, scouts mapping territory. The raids aren't spontaneous. They're the execution phase of a long-term operation. Ronan leaned forward. "What are you suggesting?" "That someone's been gathering intelligence for months, someone organized, which means sending troops blindly won't help. They'll be expecting military response. We need to understand who's behind this and what they actually want." "And how do you propose we do that?" Weimar asked acidly. "Ask the raiders politely?" "No." Fenna's mind raced, connecting more patterns. "We look at who benefits. The raids target specific villages, ones along trade routes. Not the wealthiest, but the most strategically positioned for controlling commerce flow." She pulled out more documents, her hands moving with the practiced efficiency of years of organizing information. 3 months ago, there was a proposal to redirect southern trade through eastern territories. It failed in council. But if southern routes became too dangerous, merchants would have no choice but to go east. "You're suggesting the eastern lords are behind this?" Lady Meridian said slowly. "I'm suggesting we investigate before acting. Send scouts, not soldiers. Gather evidence. Then respond with precision instead of blind force." The council was silent, absorbing this. Then Weimar laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "This is absurd. We're taking military advice from a scribe? Someone whose only qualification is copying words onto paper?" "I'm not giving military advice," Fenna said calmly. "I'm providing intelligence analysis based on documented evidence. What the council does with that information is your decision." "She's right," Lord Harwick said quietly. "The pattern is clear once you see it laid out. We should investigate before committing troops." "I agree," said Lady Meridian. Others nodded. Weimar's face darkened. "This is madness. We're letting a woman with no experience—" "A woman who sees what we missed," Ronan interrupted. "Who does her job so well she can prevent us from making catastrophic mistakes." He turned to the council. "We vote. Scout mission first, military response only after we have confirmed intelligence. All in favor?" The majority supported it. Weimar and his 2 allies were outvoted. The scouts were dispatched that evening. 3 days later, they returned with evidence that confirmed Fenna's analysis. Eastern lords had indeed hired mercenaries to destabilize southern trade routes. The revelation sent shockwaves through the council. The Eastern lords were confronted, their scheme exposed, their political credibility destroyed. And Fenna, the scribe who'd connected dots everyone else had missed, had proven beyond doubt that her value wasn't just symbolic. The formal ceremony took place on a crisp autumn morning, the palace gardens transformed into a celebration space. Nobles from across the western reaches attended, along with commoners from Ashenir and beyond. Fenna wore a gown of midnight blue, the color of ink, deliberately chosen, with her soul bond markings visible on her arms. She'd refused to hide them. They were part of her story, proof of the connection that had brought her here. The ceremony itself was both ancient and unprecedented. Traditional vows spoken by queens for centuries, adapted to acknowledge a soul bond that had no historical precedent. Ronan stood beside her, his own marked arms bare, and when he took her hands, the ink on their skin seemed to pulse with light. "I, Ronan Hartwell, Alpha King of the Western Reaches, take you, Fenna Ashcroft, as my queen and soul match. Not because tradition demands it, but because truth requires it. You see me, I see you, and in that scene we become more than either of us could be alone." Fenna's voice shook, but held steady. "I, Fenna Ashcroft, accept this crown and this bond. Not because I sought power, but because I found purpose. You called me extraordinary, I call you human. And in that mutual recognition, we build something stronger than authority. We build partnership." Thera, presiding over the ceremony, smiled as she placed the crown on Fenna's head. "By the power of old magic and new choice," she said, "I recognize this bond and this queenship. May you rule with wisdom, born of seeing truth." The crowd erupted in applause, not universal, but genuine. Fenna saw Mrs. Dalton weeping in the front row, saw Mira grinning from ear to ear, saw Jacob looking proud enough to burst. She also saw Weimar's cold fury, his refusal to applaud, but he was one voice in a crowd that was slowly choosing acceptance. The celebration afterward was overwhelming. Nobles who'd been skeptical now approached with congratulations. Merchants who'd worried about her inexperience now spoke of her intelligence. Commoners who'd thought a scribe could never be queen now talked about how she'd proven them wrong. Lady Meridian raised a toast. To Queen Fenna, who reminds us that wisdom comes from seeing clearly, not from being born in the right family. The response was enthusiastic. Later, when the formal events ended and guests began to depart, Fenna found herself alone with Ronan in the overgrown garden he'd mentioned months ago. "We should restore this," he said, looking at the tangled roses and wild ivy. "Make it beautiful again." "Or leave it wild," Fenna countered. "Let it be the one place that doesn't require perfect cultivation." Ronan smiled. "You're right. We have enough perfectly manicured spaces." They sat on a weathered stone bench, his arm around her shoulders, her head on his chest. Through the bond, their emotions flowed and mingled, relief and joy and exhaustion and hope. 3 months ago, Fenna said quietly, I was a scribe who wrote secret letters she never meant to send. And I was a king who'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen. Now look at us. Now look at us, Ronan agreed, building something neither of us expected. Fenna lifted her arm, studying the ink that marked her skin, his words permanently written on her body, a reminder of how this began. I want to be seen, she read aloud, tracing the script. That's what you wrote. That's what started everything. No, Ronan corrected gently. What started everything was you seeing me first, long before I knew you were watching. Your letter didn't create the connection. It revealed what was already there. Do you ever regret it? How complicated this became? Never. His voice was certain. Do you? Fenna thought of the hearing, the threats, the mistakes and scrutiny and constant pressure to prove herself worthy. Thought of also the moments of triumph, the respect slowly earned, the realization that she was good at this, at seeing patterns and solving problems, and making the kingdom stronger through her particular skills. No, she said finally. It's terrifying and exhausting, and sometimes I have no idea what I'm doing, but I wouldn't trade it. Wouldn't trade you. Ronan kissed the top of her head. Good, because you're stuck with me, soul bond and all. Such a hardship, Fenna teased, being magically connected to the most powerful man in the western reaches. Says the woman who became queen by accidentally sending a love letter. Fenna laughed. Really laughed, the sound bright and free. That's going in the history books, isn't it? Queen Fenna ascended to the throne via clerical error. Queen Fenna ascended because she was brave enough to write truth and wise enough to own it, Ronan corrected. The letter was just the beginning. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the garden in gold and amber light. The ink on their arms caught the glow, making the words seem to shimmer. What do we do now? Fenna asked eventually. Now? Ronan pulled her closer. Now we keep doing what we've been doing. You make the council smarter. I try to be worthy of your insights. Together we prove that partnership is stronger than tradition. And Weimar? We'll keep fighting. But he's lost, even if he doesn't admit it yet. The council has seen your value. The people are coming around. His opposition becomes less relevant every day. Fenna wanted to believe that. But she knew Weimar's type. The kind of person who'd rather destroy what he couldn't control than admit defeat. He'll try something, she said quietly. One last attempt to undermine everything. Probably, Ronan agreed. But when he does, we'll face it together, just like we've faced everything else. His certainty flowed through the bond, steadying her, and Fenna realized something fundamental had changed in her. She wasn't the careful scribe anymore, hiding her observations and guarding her words. She was a queen who saw clearly and spoke truth, who'd fought for her place and earned her crown, who'd transformed an accidental letter into a revolution of what was possible. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For reading my letter. For writing back. For seeing me when I thought I was invisible. Ronan turned her face toward his expression tender. Thank you for making me visible to myself. for reminding me that underneath the crown, I'm human, that being seen isn't weakness, it's the foundation of everything strong. He kissed her then, deep and sure, and Fenna felt the bond flare bright between them. Two souls, matched in truth and choice, building something unprecedented. When they finally pulled apart, the stars had emerged overhead, scattered across the darkening sky like spilled ink on parchment. "Come on," Ronan said, standing and pulling her up. "Let's go inside. Our kingdom awaits." Our kingdom. Not his, theirs. Fenna took his hand, feeling the warmth of his scarred knuckles against her palm, and together they walked out of the wild garden toward the palace lights. Behind them, words continued to appear on their skin, fragments of thoughts, moments of connection, the ongoing conversation of a bond that would last their lifetimes. A scribe who wrote truth had become a queen who lived it, and an Alpha King who'd been alone had found his match. The story that began with one accidental letter had transformed into something far greater, a partnership that would reshape what the Western reaches understood about power, wisdom, and the revolutionary act of being truly seen.